Today I'm going to try to come up with a solution for this trimmer, this hedge cutting machine. It's old. It came with the house when I bought it in 1996, and it works fine except for this lever here is supposed to keep the trigger in the on position so that you don't have to keep your finger on the button. So I'm going to take this apart and see if I can put a toggle switch or something to replace this, and I don't know. Or if I can find that piece, if that piece was orderable, which I severely or seriously doubt it will not be available this late in the game, then I would replace that. But I'm thinking a toggle switch where you just flip it and it will stay on. All right, let me take this apart. So this is a Black & Decker 22-inch hedge trimmer, model number 8144. To get inside to where the switch and the motor and everything is, you first have to remove this handle. This handle fits on here and has a large bolt with a nut, this large screw and a nut, a nylon lock nut, that basically you use a large flathead to unscrew. Once you've removed that, then there's 3 Phillips screws that have to be removed, and they look like they're all the same length. So one screw, one by the switch, or one at the front, one by the switch, and one near the rear. Now this cover should just come off with that removed. Okay, so I didn't expect it to come apart like that, but that's kind of cool. So, well, here we go. So that comes off. There's your motor. There's the switch, and the piece that's broke is here. This piece here. So it looks like the entire trigger would have to be replaced if that was a piece that was available. This is just a switch this is a momentary slide switch here. So what I'm going to want to do is put a switch somehow to short those two together where it says when you flip the switch, it's on all the time. Basically, it's the same as that being on all the time. So now the question is, would you want the switch on top or would you want it on bottom? Have to think about that. I guess it would make sense to have it on bottom, because then this here would protect it from getting accidentally hit by brush or something. So if I drill a hole in the housing and mount a small toggle switch, that would work. All right, well, let me think about it. Okay, this thing, according to the label, is rated at 2.8 amps. We'll call it 3 amps. I've got a switch here that is rated for 125 volts, 6 amps. So this is double the duty of what's needed, so it should be perfect. Now, problem is it's kind of big. So I don't know how I'm going to mount this in here. So I'll have to probably move these wires out of the way first, if I move the switch out of the way. Anyway, so I got to figure out how I'm going to mount that to where I can get the switch. Maybe it has to come out the side. That's a possibility. Might be a good idea to come out the side anyway to get easier access to it. All right, let me look at it some more. After studying this and trying to put the switch in different places, different cavities in this housing, I've decided about the only option I have is to put it in this cavity here and drill a hole down and then have the toggle switch sticking out the side. That way, when you take it apart in the future, that switch does not have to be unsoldered or anything. Like if I put it in the middle, if I put it going down, then it wouldn't be in there solid because of the way the pieces are halved. The 2 housings are halved on that line. So I think my only option is to put it in this cavity pointing downward. So, all right, that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to drill a hole in the center of this cavity and make a pilot hole, and then drill bigger and bigger until I get to the size of the switch, and then I'll mount it. I'll mount the switch and tighten it down with the washer and the nut that came with the switch, and then I'll be soldering the wires to basically be in parallel with this switch. All right, let me get that going. Righty, I got the switch mounted, so it's going to be like that. That's how it's going to actuate. Let me get this flipped around so we can see the other side. So it nestles in that little cavity just perfect. So now I've got to basically put this switch in parallel with this one. So it means I'll be cutting these wires and soldering them on there. So that'll be what I do next. And then I've got to reinstall the trigger, which might be tricky because that spring's kind of a pain in the ass. All right, let me see what I can do. Okay, so you can kind of see what I'm doing here. This wire here has already been soldered onto the switch. This wire here is prepped. What I did was I took my soldering iron and melted the insulation, and then I tinned the wire in there. And now I will just solder that wire to the switch like that. And that essentially puts this switch in parallel with that switch. And that should be getting us to where we want to be. To where we can push this to run it manually, or to flip this switch to make it on all the time. All right, let me finish up. Okay, so I've got the houses mated back together. One thing to keep in mind when you're putting it back together, to get the wires to where they're not preventing the housing from coming together. When I soldered the wires onto the switch, it made the wires taut. So I had to actually use my soldering iron and create a relief point in the housing inside there on one of the supports. I just made a little hole there, you know, a little indentation, so that the wire would fit and not interfere with this being closed together. So now I'm going to put the handle back on. It basically goes like this in both of these recesses, and then the bolt goes all the way through. And let's see, this side has, I don't know if you can tell, but it's got a, well, maybe it's this side. Hold on. I believe it's this side. One of these two sides has where the bolt or the nut, yeah, see how it's got flat sides inside there? The nut is held secure as you're tightening it down, so you don't have to have a wrench to hold it in place. So this can only go on one way. That makes sense anyway. Let me get this back together. Here we are. Got a bush that needs to be trimmed. Got my hedger here. Got it plugged in. If I did this correctly, when I push the button, it should turn on. Okay, the trigger turns it on. Also, if I flip that switch, it should turn on and stay on, and it does. So this is a project that is complete, and I'm happy. Well, let me test it before I say I'm happy. Well, my switch works good. It didn't burn out on me while I was using it. Thing is still working great. Probably needs to be lubed though. It feels a little dry. But you can see my hedge is actually trimmed. Looks a lot better than it did. It ain't perfect because I'm not an artist. But I'm happy with it. So, yeah. Nice little project. If you have one of these and it won't stay on because a piece of plastic on the trigger broke, do what I did. Just put in a switch, and this position here is actually kind of convenient. While using it, I accidentally hit it with a branch or something and turned it off, but if it only happens every once in a while, I can live with that. So yeah, not too bad. Thanks for watching, guys.